Kia ora koutou, welcome to a very special episode of Inside Netball with the Silver Fern World Cup squad just been named in the grand final of the ANZ Premiership, all done and dusted. I've got the big guns, I've got everyone on the couch with me today. Let's get straight into it, ladies. The grand final, the Mystics ended up dominating an 18-goal win. What did we make of that, Jen?
Well, I had been hoping for something better, you know. 19 goals last year, 18 goals this year. It never got going. And, I mean, I felt for the Stars, but I thought the Mystics were just outstanding.
Oh, and led by Grace Weke. I mean, 70 goals in 60 minutes of netball, just absolutely exceptional. At times, she was completely unstoppable. And we won't even get into it yet, but it was because of that combination, if you ask me, with a certain someone, it may not have made a Silver Fern squad. But I just thought they were a class above the Mystics, and they came out, showed their experience, and, you know, what a way to send off Sulu. I mean, such a special person and player.
Yeah, and speaking of Sulu, I think she alluded to it in the pre-match interview. She said that they're ready and they could feel it, that I think that they knew that they were probably going to go to town on the Stars, although in the press conference, Kitty Wills and Maya Wilson did say they were happier with this grand final than the previous year because they felt they were in the contest more this time.
I thought they reflected well in that press conference, actually, that, you know, at times they got within two, so they actually felt like they competed. But for me, Mystics, it was a game that I think we should have seen even more throughout the season. When you look at that team, you know, they should have been beaten teams by that margin. Would have the Pulse made it a better final, you know, perhaps? Because I think, looking at the beginning of the season, I didn't have Stars at all in my top three. So I think they actually did really well to get to the final.
But I think we had a lot of hiccups, though, didn't we? I mean, the Mystics had, well, there were a number of times when they didn't have their starting seven. I mean, they had injury and they had sickness and all sorts of things. So, I don't know, I guess that would explain why you only saw that performance. And I was surprised to hear the Stars say they thought that was okay. Because I didn't look okay.
Really bad.
They were pretty fired up before the game, actually. You know, I remember talking to Kitty Wills before and saying, you're going to lose a final to win a final, and now they've lost two finals, so they're really going to want to win the next one. So they were pretty fired up and actually quite confident. I remember even speaking with Maya Wilson when she had the headset on during the warm-up. So they had the confidence there, but you couldn't stop. You know, Amazing Grace.
I'll come back to you, Annie, because you talked about whether the Pulse could have done a better job. Someone like Kelly Jury up against Grace Weke. The Stars only got 3 games in that entire game. If the Stars are going to be in a grand final again, do you guys think defence is where they need to focus?
Well, when you look at what Kerry Wills put out in the elimination final, and Holly Fowler was so good at goal defence with Ali back at goalkeeper, and then she started a completely different lineup. And I know why she did it, because when Clara played against Grace in their last game, she actually had a really good game over Grace. But I think you've got to reward your players when they're performing well. They were on a roll, Temu and Holly Fowler, and once she started Clara and she made that change back, they just couldn't get that rhythm going again, and as a result couldn't get ball.
But it wasn't just not getting ball. When you looked at the centre pass-offs, you know, obviously you get 50-50 amount of the ball. Stars, you know, managed to convert 10 less than the Mystics. The Mystics were just so clever with the ball, they weren't turning it over. So I think it wasn't just the fact that they weren't getting ball, they were also making mistakes, and they missed a couple of, and I feel bad saying this about these shooters because I actually think overall shooters shot well, but there was a couple of times they missed crucial shots that either would have got them within 2, I think at one point, and 5, and it swung very quickly the other way and all of a sudden it blew out. So, yeah, so I think didn't probably get enough ball, but I think, you know, there was a spread of reasons.
Yeah, I think we can probably all agree, though, at the end of the day, that Mystics team and that Mystics performance, they were going to beat anyone, right? They were the deserving winners of the ANZ Premiership, putting out that performance.
But great in Tia's first year, you know, she took them to their first grand final. What a great year for her.
But obviously I don't think the Silver Fern selectors noticed that, because, well, I mean, 2 Mystics players in the World Cup squad.
Yes, well, let's get into that, shall we? Because yes, Dame Noeline did name her Silver Fern squad for the World Cup on Wednesday. Here it is on your screen right there. Guys, yep, just before we get into the nitty-gritty and into the specific positions, what are your initial reactions to the squad? Go down the line, give it to me.
Well, I am disappointed that there is no... I mean, look, let's start positively. That's a very good side, you know, and you look at, there's experience there, there's a lovely mix of balance. But I am disappointed that there's no room for Peta Toiava and no room for Michaela Sokolic-Beatson. I think, to me, she was the player of the final. I felt she shut Crampton down. She just is such a character, and I know you should.
Classic Jeannie.
I know.
She does great interviews. She should do that.
That's right. But that's my first impression.
We're agreeing again.
I know.
We've been agreeing a
It
bit
won't last.
lately. Yeah, it won't last. But yeah, I was just probably went, oh, that's nice. You know, that's a very good team. Don't get me wrong, but I was probably just, oh, you know, I can say this just, you know, add drama. I was a little bit bored. I wanted a little bit of pizzazz, something, you know, a little bit of a risk taking. But I can say that because I'm not a selector and no one's going to come back on me and say, hello, why did you make that decision? But I'm with you. I think you needed the pizzazz. You needed the X factor of Peta Toiava. And I'm not saying that other people can't feed Grace, but there's something special. And knowing, even if she'd been on the bench in that semi and final, that if things weren't going right, yeah, I just hope that doesn't come back to bite them.
I agree with you. I think I was probably in shock that Peta wasn't there. I think this is the fittest we've seen her, the most consistent netball that she's played. And I do honestly think Australia is sitting there across the ditch at the moment going, thank goodness. Thank goodness she's not there. Because you're right, Adine, just to have that up your sleeve on the semis and the finals and knowing what she can come on and do and how quickly she can feed Grace, I really do think Australia are thinking, thank goodness she's not there. And then Australia, on the other hand, they're preparing to play against players who are all pretty much the same in our midcourt. And they are great, they are fit, they are fast, but I think they are all very similar, whereas Peta, I think she just provides that pizzazz.
So who would you not put in? If you had Peta in, you'd keep Gordon out. Because to me, Gordon's had much more of a consistent season than Peta. So if it came down to the two of them...
We're jumping the gun a bit here. I wanted to get into the mid-court chat shortly. Just wanted your initial thoughts, so any initial,
my
overall
thoughts, I actually don't mind the team.
Yeah.
I probably would have preferred Peta to be in there, but I can understand what Knowles has done.
Okay, common theme there from our inside netball crew. I like the team. I think it's a safe team, but it is a team that I have confidence in, and I believe that they will do the job. Let's have a look at the shooting circle in particular. Here they are, your four shooters. No real surprises. I think once we found out that Bailey Mears was stepping down and not putting her hand up for selection, it kind of felt like these four selected themselves a little bit.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think, well, there were no other choices, really. And I see, you know, Tiana Maturo in there in the reserve 3, and that's where I had her. And I'm glad for her, really, because she gets another chance at, well, it's a bit of redemption, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think the four, as you said, picked themselves. I think what will be interesting is who will get that initial nod to play with Grace. I'm thinking it's probably going to be Amelia Ann. Captain's going to be your captain. But I wonder what the next best option is. I think that's almost more interesting, you know, what works well, because you'd think if Grace is having the game off, who would connect well with Amelia Ann, because you're going to have to give Grace a rest at different times. So if anything, that's probably the biggest talking point. Good to see, you know, Tiana, but I agree, it was probably those 5 shooters. I think it would be very hard pressed to argue, I don't know, anybody else.
No, and I think it just comes down to what's your moving circle. Do you put Mills back and you've got Tapaya at the front, or is it Mills at goal attack with Maya at the back for the moving circle?
Yeah, no, I think the only question mark would have been around probably TP and Tiana Maturo, right? But you look at Maturo's volume, not good enough. But in chatting to Knowles earlier on, she talked about how when she has Tiana in her team, she's confident that she can get that volume up with her. So it's interesting how she thinks you take her out of the Pulse environment, put her into the Ferns, and she'll get the better of her.
And I feel like TP stood up, like she was one of those players that actually stood up at the later part of the season. So I wonder if she almost
played her way in
because she did step it up.
Well, that, and she has pretty much always performed well in the black dress when she's come on. You
I
talk
agree.
about Commonwealth Games, Courtney.
Yes.
You know, you were there. She was a standout.
Yeah, I thought she was a standout for me. We didn't have Ekanasio, and she really stood up in that goal attack position because we were wondering who was going to do it. And I think she just provides that height and that craftiness with the ball. So I think for me, Tapaya has proven herself in the black dress.
And that's exactly what I've been thinking. That game against Jamaica at the Com Games, and you know, poor Maya had a mare to begin with, and probably should have been taken off earlier, and then TP came on, and she was so clever and crafty.
And that's what you heard in Inside Netball a few weeks ago with Deb Fuller, right? it wasn't just about your form at this ANZ. It's about how you've performed at international level. And that's why over the last 4 years, we've seen all these different squads, so many players go in and out. And so to me, that epitomises TP. She stepped up at that international level and probably it's got her over the line.
And it's why Matuaro's in that 3, because you look at other goal attacks, Mali Salah's had a pretty good ANZ Premiership. Her stats are better. Matuaro didn't even sit in the top 10 for volume in terms of shots taken, whereas Mali Salah did. But Mali Salah hasn't been in that environment, high-performance environment for the last 3 years. So I think it was an easy way to get Tiana Matuaro back into that environment.
I remember a couple of quad series ago, they picked Phil de Vuy, didn't they? And they took her to the, quad series in England, and she never got on the court. And I just wonder, what went on there. So I guess, you pick people and you find out what they're like.
Excuse me, probably the easiest area of court to debate and discuss. So let's move on to the mid-court, because I have a feeling this might take a while. But here are your 4 middies for the World Cup. Yeah, you heard us all say it before. No Peta Toiava, Maddie Gordon, maybe the bit of the bolter in there.
Yes, well, let's start talking about Kate Heffernan. I love Kate.
We all agree on Kate Heffernan.
What I love about Kate Heffernan is she wins so much ball, and she was fabulous at Com Games. She was terrific. I looked at the stats for the ANZ Premiership, and she is the only one, I think. Maddie Gordon might be number 10, but she is number 4. And she's a mid-quarter, and she had 26 intercepts or something. So, I mean, I love somebody who wins ball. And, if you come back to talking about the wing defence, she knows how to play it. If things go awry elsewhere, she can slot into that position.
And at the quad series early in the year, she also did get the mid-quarter of the tournament as well.
Yes.
So a big nod to her. But, I mean, like I said, I'm just still in shock that Peta Toiava isn't there.
Or, Annie, we were just talking, back in 2003, yourself and I were basically specialist wing attacks. We
both could
You
play
could play centre.
These two can play centre. Like, Gina could have played centre against, who
Gina could, yes.
Against Uganda and Singapore.
Honestly,
she could have played
put,
centre.
like pins in her ankles to play centre. I know that about her.
But at a World Cup, surely you would.
And Jodie Brown, I remember 2003, played centre.
Yes.
Like, there are games in a World Cup you are going to win. You're going to win easily, and that's when you use your bench, your wider squad, and you can play them a little bit out of position. I think, and particularly because of this whole change in rules around having these 3 players that are over there if there's an injury. I keep going back. This was the time. Again, you could have taken a.
You'd twiddle with the rules, though, wouldn't you?
Well, there's room for twiddling.
So the rule is
other teams might twiddle as well.
And say, we were talking about earlier, if, say, Heffernan went down in the World Cup and you had Peta in your reserve and you put Peta in, she is a specialist wing attack going in for a
centre
wing defence centre.
Yeah, but you've got that many.
You've got Phoenix.
Yeah, you've got Phoenix, you've got
Carden.
Carden, you've got Maddie.
It's risky,
I'm
guys.
sure Whitney can
I
go
like
there.
the risk.
You've got to risk it all for the World Cup.
So if Peta was in the 4, who is she replacing?
Yeah, that's tough.
Well, for me, she'd be in for Gordon.
For Gordon?
Yes.
Okay.
'Cause I just
Not Whitney?
sometimes-
Yeah.
No, I like Whitney. Whitney's fast and explosive, and I just love the way she changes pace at
And I think
lightning
Whitney
speed.
is like Tapia in the black dress. She's been tested, she's proven. I think she
Yeah.
plays very good against Australia as well. So for me, Whitney's proven herself.
Yeah.
So
And that's
you'd
not to
have
say I don't like
Whitney,
Gordon,
Peta and Gina all in there who have all played wing attack all season.
Yeah, we also have players
wing
who've
defences.
not played wing defence at all.
Yeah, I know, but...
So, and Whitney in the black dress, she plays centre. Well, she has over the last, year and a half.
yes.
Would you keep this 4?
Yeah, who are you?
I want your opinion here too, young lady.
I think I was expecting Peta to be in there instead of Whitney, and I would have had Whitney as the reserve if they were going to take the risk and find the way to have both specialists in there, especially after that grand final, which we know Knowles was watching, and she didn't have her 12 selected until that grand final.
Well, she says she didn't.
Says she didn't.
And I'm not going to not believe her, but, I mean, you just wonder.
Okay, who's your starting wing defence?
Good question, Storm.
Well, from the quad series, she likes Heffernan at centre. So I think she's going to be your starting centre. So is it going to be Karen swinging across to wing D with Phoenix at goal defence.
I agree. I think you're on form. I know Steele have had a tough season, but on international form, I would start Kate as well in that centre position.
So you think centre is more important than wing defence?
No, I'm not saying it's more important. I just feel like from the attacking perspective, I would put Kate there. But Maddie used to always play wing defence.
She's a great wing defence.
She was that's where she started, and she's kind of moved all the way up the court. So she's definitely an option at wing defence, but I would probably lean still towards whether you put Fee or Cudden there as well. So, but
I just worry that if they do put, say, Heffernan at wing defence, you've got Gordon at centre and then Gina Crampton, there's no one there on attack that's got that real flair. Like, Gina's safe, she's, you know, she gives some good ball, but that's where the X factor comes in with Petter. Heffernan's not an attacking player. Gordon, I think, is definitely more defensive. You know, so that's where I would have quite liked a Peter Tuiava in there, just when things are needing some razzle-dazzle. That's what she provides.
I think too, if we go off the last World Cup, Katrina Dore, she went to wing defence, which I think was a very smart move by Noel. So I think it's going to be Cardenberger will be in the wing defence, Phoenix Karako at goal defence.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because you think back to all the great teams of the past, and they all have specialist wing defences, and this is heresy, but Selena Gilsonen, the Australian, is my all-time favourite wing defence, who I think now lives in New Zealand, but never mind. You know, she was a specialist wing defence. Leslie Nicol-Rumble was a...
Simone McInnes.
Oh, yeah.
Schultz.
How could I forget?
All very good
all
wing
Aussies.
defences. Yeah, yeah.
But, that's...
You say that, but we were just talking about Liverpool. Katrina Dore was playing wing defence. She probably hadn't played much wing defence in her life, let alone for, I think she must have been at the Pulse at that stage throughout the year. We weren't too worried about it back then, but for some reason...
We decided that was the exception. That's what we decided in the car as we were driving here, that she was the exception that year.
And also going back to that World Cup, Noel said, and I think she still stands by this, what you really do need is a strong goal attack and a strong goal defence. That will link both and connect both ends. So for me, I think you've got Amelia Renacanacio and that goal attack, and I'm going to say Phoenix Karaka at that goal. They're her two main links, I think.
Oh, Karaka, not Berger.
Interesting.
And goal defence, and then Berger's our wing defence. Well,
let's move on to the defence,
Yeah.
because now we're kind of encroaching into that area of court. So let's check out, here are your four defenders. I almost wonder whether you risk putting Jane Watson across at goal defence, Kelly Jury in the back, and Karen at wing defence, because that is a formidable, terrifying defensive end for me.
I do like that. I just worry about Jane's injury.
Yes.
Whether or not she can run out at goal defence, because we haven't seen it this year for the tactics. Can she go back-to-back in the pool play and then still run out at goal defence? I'm not sure.
I think she's a better goalkeeper too. She has more time to see the ball coming down court, and she tends to get more hand to ball at goalkeep with Jane. I don't think we've seen the best of her yet since coming back from having her baby either. So I'd like to see her really cement that goalkeep position once Kelly's not in there.
But when will Kelly not be in there? Because really, I was thinking about this coming out, and I was thinking, I mean, she's in phenomenal form, Kelly Jury.
Not as in better. Was she in better form last year? I'd say yes.
Oh, I can't think back that
She was the MVP. She was the MVP last year. I don't think
she was. Yeah.
I don't think she's been as good this season.
She's leading all the stats, I think. Mind you, stats schmats, you know.
How much weight do we look into those stats?
And look how tall she is. Like, that is going to come down to it as well. A lot of these other teams, what have they got? They've got their own Grace Wicket. They've got really tall goal sheet. Just look at Jamaica. And let's be honest, Jamaica, for me, is the scariest team of the whole World Cup. I'm just finding them petrifying, because all of a sudden they have not only got the athletes, which they've always had, but they now have experience and they have confidence. I'm like, Jamaica. But that's where I think Kelly, you can't coach height. You're either tall or you're not. And I know Jane can jump, but you know, Kelly Jury's got the height and can compete with these other tall ladies. So a dilemma for Dame Knowles: who starts at goalkeep? Do you start with Jane Watson and hope you can have your Karen Berger-Watson combination, or do you move everyone across and start Kelly Jury? Because I agree with you guys. Kelly Jury has been in great form, especially towards the end of this season, and she's what Knowles kind of refers to as that X factor in her defensive end.
I think it's going to depend on who we play, and I think
Yeah.
we're going to see a lot of that throughout the tournament. Knowles is going to have these combinations that she's going to put out depending on the size and the ability. So I think if they've got coming up against a very mobile shooting circle, she'll put Jane and Carden.
Yep.
If they've got one of the big birds at the back, she'll put Kelly to compensate that.
I agree, and I think when we're at Com Game Storm, seeing the speed of international shooters and moving circles compared to what we had in ANZ, I just think we did get found out a little bit by not having a Jane Watson at the back. So I think it's going to come down to who we're playing.
Well, and the thing there that I remember from that Com Games is that our biggest problem was we didn't win any ball. And we had, if you think back to it, we had no Berger, no Watson. Well, they're our two big ball winners.
For sure.
And I think that was, we still got bronze, which I came away from Birmingham thinking, not bad.
And so did the other teams. They actually went up to Knowles afterwards and said, oh gosh, we've got our eye on you for World Cup, because if you can do this without Watson, Berger, Ekanasio, then we've got our eye on you.
Love it. This is the positivity we want.
Yes,
Let's
that's
have
right.
a look at the reserves. Okay, the 3 players that will be travelling with the team but won't come in unless there is an injury. We've already talked about Tiana Matuaro. Let's start with Mila Buchanan. Can cover centre wing attack quite well. I'm sure if she needed to, could go into wing defence, but she's played well enough this season to justify that selection, I think.
Yeah, and Dame Knowles, she said when we interviewed her that Mila is part of that engine room which she provides, and I also think Mila will be very crucial in the build-up because the Ferns have got like 3 camps, so I just think she's going to be very, she's going to be the one that all the mid-courts are running against, and she's going to be, I think, crucial for them in the build-up.
That'll be a real competitive bunch, won't it? And I think Mila, she contests ball. I think what I like about her is that she can slot in any one of those 3 positions. So that's what gives her the nod over someone like a Michaela Soklich-Beatson for me.
Anna Peta Toiava. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and she's had probably her most outstanding season, with Crampton. So, yeah, I'm happy for Mila that she made that 3.
And I think Sulu, I wonder if Sulu got the nod as well, because, there was talk of, do you have a bolter in that 3 with the Caristithe, with the likes of that. But I wonder if Sulu got the nod as well because of, a big part of a successful team is culture. Team culture, and there's no doubt Sulu provides that, or brings such mana and knows how to pull a team together. She also, as we heard in the final, is not scared to pull people up if they're not performing, and she has those honest conversations with people. So I wonder if it's that experience that she brings. We know how good she'll be because that is not easy to go as those 3. You've just missed out on a World Cup final. You don't want any sulkers going and sitting in the hotel and going, oh, this is so unfair, I didn't get to play, she's playing crap, I should have been there. Sulu will never do that. She's going to do everything she can to help this team win. So I wonder if she got the nod for that reason. And Jen, again, that was our car ride. We were talking about this. The fact that her and Fee have already got that combination, and you could say the same about Gina and Mila. And so that kind of gives them the nod as well, because they've already got that familiar combo. So if you got thrown in, because that would be what it would be. You're getting thrown in the middle of a tournament, you need to just slip straight into it. And so those players have got a connection.
And that's probably why she hasn't put a bolter in that 3, because she had to have picked someone that could go into a World Cup final.
Do the job, not be worried.
So you couldn't have picked a Wormsley, she's not quite ready yet. And I agree, the 3, it was really important for the dynamics because they're pretty much with the team the whole time. There's 15 of them in Cape Town, they're staying together, they train together, they eat together. The 3 just don't go to the games and play together. So you want the 3 that are going to be hyping up the other 12 and competing against them, and as you say, not being the Debbie Downer and being a sulker. And I think she's got the right mix.
I remember Noeline, when she was on with us, I think it might have been the first time, or no, it might have been the second time, and she was saying it's a really difficult position for these 3.
It's a hard role.
And I agree with you. I think Sulu would be fine. And I think the other 2, it'll be interesting for me that she's got Sulu with Tiana Matuaro, because I think if anyone can, what can I say, harness Matuaro? And I mean that in a positive way, because I think you want spirit and that's something I think Mila has too, because you see it sometimes in the game. But I think that could be a very smart trio.
I also feel sorry for Mila because she got picked last year in the Constellation Cup for those first 2 tests in New Zealand and did not even get on the court. She wasn't given an opportunity, you know, and then was it the first or the second? Anyway, 2 of them, and then Peter came in, and I thought, you know, how can then Knowles not pick her again? So I'm kind of glad she's picked her based on the fact of, you know, her performances in the ANZ.
Well, I know Mila was pretty upset after that campaign. Went away, worked really hard and has had a great season. So great to see her in there. Right, let's just have a quick look at the pools and what pool the Silver Ferns will be in over at the World Cup. They've got Uganda, Trinidad and Tobago and Singapore. And then I believe we will merge with Pool C before we head into semi-finals and finals. Right, thank you so much for joining me, guys. Lots of robust conversation, lots of debate. We need a camera in your 2 car ride.
Well, that's right.
Great camera.
Well, perhaps not.
But that is all from us here on this very special episode of Inside Netball. We'll see you in a couple of weeks for a Netball World Cup preview live on Sky Sport.